one of the ways that difficult conversations often fail very quickly is when people start using language like, you made me feel, or you did this, or you're so unreliable, right? You're putting a lot of the blame outwardly. And actually what makes a productive conflict conversation is being able to take ownership of what are the facts and what's the story or the interpretation you have around those facts. So when we say facts, what we mean is that which is indisputable, that which you can see and you hear. You know, it was 10 o'clock on a Sunday and you were having lunch, right?
A CCTV camera could pick this up, you know?
Exactly. And it's funny because sometimes actually our memories are so bad that actually even with facts, you can't be 100% sure. So it's even helpful actually, I find, in conversations like this to say like, you know, as far as I can remember, right? So that's the facts. The interpretation is the story you have around these events. So for instance, like you were incredibly late. Actually, incredibly late? What does that mean? That's not a fact. That's some sort of evaluation of what it means to be late. So you actually want to say something like, yeah, I noticed you were 10 minutes late. And then your story of like, oh, I find you to be so unreliable, that's a story. I have a story that you are unreliable, especially when it comes to showing up for our relationship, for instance. What's really important about naming this as a story is that you're showing that you know it's not 100% true. It's your version of reality. And we all perceive and experience the world in different ways. And it's really important to take ownership of our specific lens that we are seeing the world through.
And you can have different ways of phrasing this. I mean, a common one that Georgie and I use is, I have a story that, but you could equally say, a part of me feels this, or I imagine this to be true, but I could be right or wrong. And that immediately softens what you're sharing because the person isn't feeling on the defensive of like, wait, hang on, but that's not true, because you've already said it's a story.
A good example, for instance, might be if you were to start a conversation and say, you don't care about me, it can create, can make someone very defensive, right? Because, and also, how do we then show that we care about someone? It creates something that's very black and white. Instead, if they said, hey, I have a story, you don't care about me, then there's actually then space to be able to say, and I know that that's not true. Like, I've seen you show up in these other ways. So what you're doing is you're highlighting the specific incident, the specific behavior that you found difficult, not all the times that they didn't care for you.
And one last thing I would add to this is it's never really about the dishes or the being late or any of these things. It's about what Georgie just said, like, I have a story that you don't care about me, or I have a story that I don't matter. That's really like at the heart of the conflict. And when you receive that from the other person, notice a impulse to come in and correct that story or to immediately reassure them. Because actually that's not what's going to be in service of this. This isn't about that. That's you coming in to impose your own view of how to make this right. And actually this is an experience that the other person is having that's probably touching on some old wounds, childhood stuff. And so the best thing we can do is just acknowledge that story for them and say, I can so understand or feel you in that place. That must feel really hard to feel like you don't matter. So just a little word of caution there around leaping in to correct the story.
If you want to lean into more difficult conversations in your life and have more intimacy and connection,
then feel free to check out our group programs or book a one-to-one coaching call with Georgie or I.